Hello everyone. As promised, I'm back with a follow-up review of the 5-finger sparring gloves. Right away, you might notice in the title that it is 1 or a 5-star glove. What do I mean by that? If this glove was marketed as a light sparring glove, it would get 5 stars. It would do its job perfectly fine. But since it's marketed as a sparring glove for all types of fighting, and they sell this glove for longsword and full speed combat, that's where this glove gets 1 to 2 stars. If you are looking for a full combat, full speed metal sword set of gloves, this falls short in too many areas. I've put about 40 hours of fighting on these gloves, and I'm not sure if it'll show up in the video, but there's a lot of marks and a lot of sword hits that you can already see on the forearms. So I've used these for long enough to give them a pretty decent review, and there's a few major flaws that make themselves apparent right away. So what I'll do is I'll talk about what actually makes these good for a light sparring session to medium pace sparring session, let's say, with metal weapons, and what makes it worth buying for that. So what makes it worth buying for general light to medium pace sparring is it's a very lightweight glove, and it can absorb relatively well everywhere all around light to medium blows. It's also a very well balanced glove. It's about the same weight as this much smaller looking Red Dragon glove, but the weight is spread out all the way from finger to the base of the glove here. So it feels even lighter than these because these situate the weight mainly on your hands. And they're a pretty light glove. Let's not get it skewed here. It's not like these are heavy, but these are almost not noticeable when you're wearing them. That's how light they are. The other thing the glove does well is it does provide lots of mobility, and the finger articulation also allows you to manipulate your sword in ways a lot of other gloves do not. They're easy to get on and off. I made one mistake when buying the gloves is I gave myself a little bit of playroom when I measured myself to give the manufacturers of this gloves the specs that were needed to make them for me. The problem is I probably should have given myself an extra ½ an inch circumference around my wrists and my forearm, and maybe about a ¼ inch around the circumference of my hand, just to make them fit a little bit looser, and to allow other things like sleeves of gambesons and whatnot to fit a little bit easier in the forearm region here of the glove. One area that I have zero complaints about with the glove is the clamshell, the cup area here up front. It's very strong and it does its job. I took some very, very, very hard blows on this, which I could feel through it just a little bit, but it did its job. But I will come back to that when talking about how to make these gloves a 5-star glove for full speed metal sword sparring. What makes this a 1 or 2-star gauntlet if you're doing heavy combat? Well, in the original video, which is linked below, which was just an unboxing and a first impression video, I mentioned I was wary about the wrist. So when you're wearing them, the wrists don't stay open like this. They actually close up a bit, and they do segment. But this padding they have in the wrist is way too thin. It doesn't protect your wrists at all. I've received a couple medium blows, which I was thankful they weren't hard, that hit my wrist, and I thought immediately as soon as I got hit that, 1, ow, that hurt, and 2, if that would have been a full blow, it could have actually broken my wrist. So they need to address this area of the glove right here They don't have to worry so much over here, because if you do get hit on this side of your arm, something's terribly gone wrong. You shouldn't be getting hit over here at all. Most blows are going to happen on this side of the gauntlet, as you can tell from some of the marks all over here. They need to figure out a way whether they make another layer of segment on top of this one that generally has most of its padding over here, or whether they just create like a sort of double layer. I'm not entirely sure how they should do it, but they do need to increase the wrist protection. The other area that needs to be improved on the glove, this is a little bit of a lesser complaint, is this thumb pad. You can see how thick or thin the thumb pad is. This needs to be thicker, probably made out of the same material that the forearm guard is made out of. It also needs to come farther down the thumb, so where you see it bend up here, it needs to extend up to the basically the joint of the thumb, and then it needs to carry on down here a bit. Because you'll notice it's pretty much right on the edge of the resin, so it doesn't offer any extra protection for the thumb itself. And I've had a couple of blows. There's one, you might be able to see it with reflection there. That was actually a very, very, very powerful downward blow, a fendente. And not only was it powerful, it landed in such a way that on the inside here, it actually caught the edge of the resin, and the resin itself ended up pinching my thumb. So if this thing was one, thicker, and two, extended over the thumb, and then also, once you get past the joint here, extend it a little bit higher here, so maybe to about this point in the gauntlet, to about right there. If it was extended to there and it was that thick, I would have had no problems at all. I probably wouldn't even have felt it. It's the only reason why I really noticed it is because the resin itself doesn't extend very far into the pad. It's generally right where the tie is. So now this leads us to the fingers. I think the fingers are the area of the gloves that most people have the most questions about. Does this resin work? Does it protect the fingers? How mobile is it? Does it hurt when something hits the resin? So I'm going to splice in some video here, and you'll notice my finger is quite damaged. And you'll notice even now, nearly a week later, the damage is still there. It was actually pretty deep. If you look on the gauntlet finger here, you'll notice there's a crack in the resin. And if I open it up a little bit, you might even see my blood there. The number one reason why I cannot recommend these as heavy-duty gloves is the fingers. Did the resin do its job? Did it stop my finger from getting broken? Did it work better than this? Actually, it did. It did stop my finger from being broken. But unfortunately, what it also did was it broke. It split. And the blow that hit me here, I would not even consider a hard blow. It was medium, and it got caught a little bit by the clamshell. So it was half absorbed, but yet it still snapped and it still broke. And it still damaged my finger. This stuff does act like a cast. It does stop your finger from being broken, but there is no padding underneath it, and there's no padding on top of it. So even the slightest blows to the fingers sting. Unlike these gloves, if you get little to medium blows, they don't hurt very much because they're actually soft and they absorb shock. Whereas these don't absorb any shock. So anything that really relatively hits them, it hurts. Does that stop you from fighting? No. You kind of get used to getting hit on the fingers when you're a longsword practitioner anyways. But as I've mentioned, the number one reason why I could not recommend these to someone for heavy fighting is because of the resin. It's not because it doesn't work to stop your finger from getting broken. It's because there's a design flaw with them. So is there a way that they can make these fingers better without having to redesign the wheel, without having to redesign the glove? I believe there is. However they do this method of creating the resin for the fingers, They need to find a way to either integrate this material or some sort of rubber or some sort of leather or something on top of them that acts as a shock absorber, which will probably stop any snapping from happening. They also need to put a material on the inside to protect your fingers if something does snap. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, you could just buy a leather glove, cut it at the wrist, and then put the leather glove in. Okay, that's fine. We could do that. But I still think that's a design flaw, right? Like, you shouldn't have to buy a secondary glove in order to protect your hand when you're buying something that is this expensive. They could also take the clamshell here down about another inch, basically to where the knuckle joint is right here, and you wouldn't lose too much mobility of the fingers themselves. I was looking at it when I was holding my sword. You never really flex your fingers to this extreme angle. They're usually somewhere around here. So by extending this part of the glove down to about the middle knuckle joint, you've now eliminated a lot of the blows that are actually going to be landed here, and you still have full finger articulation, which is what these gloves are built for. So if you extended the clamshell, put some padding on top, put some padding underneath, I think you would have actually created a very strong protection for the fingers. So to conclude here, this glove, if you are using it for light sparring, medium sparring, side sword work, anything that's maybe a single-handed sword, it's a very good gauntlet. I would probably give it 5 stars. If you're doing longsword fighting and you never tend to go in tournaments, or you don't really go more than like 75%, this glove is adequate. It'll do the job. It's still not going to protect your wrist. Even a blow at 75% on the wrist could be a dangerous blow. But if you do full speed combat, I can't recommend these gloves. I'll have to say there is a positive note about these gloves. They don't need to be redesigned. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here in order to make these gloves good. What I've talked about are all things I believe the manufacturer of this glove can do. And it won't even change the value of the glove. It's not like you're adding so much more material they have to charge you hundreds of dollars more for the glove. It's not like they have to redesign the general shape of the glove. All they need to simply do is make this pad thicker, make it come down the thumb more, make it come wider over here, make it come higher up on the glove, past this little divot joint here. Add some more wrist padding, whether they double it up, create some sort of covering over top that acts as a shock absorber. There's multiple ways they could do it. Whether that's extending the clamshell down here to the knuckle in order to protect the fingers more, adding more padding, whether it's rubber, whether it's leather, something on top to act as a shock absorber to potentially stop the resin itself from snapping, and also adding on the inside of the resin, maybe some leather or some sort of material that will once again act as an inside shock absorber and maybe even protect the finger if it does happen to snap. So there's one more thing I want to talk about here, and it's what am I going to do to improve the gloves? I want to go along with these a little bit farther, and I've actually got a plan. These gloves are pretty much shot, and I'm going to be cutting the fingers off. I'm going to be cutting out the leather on the bottom, and I'm going to be finding a way to actually cement them on top of these. And I've already, just by sticking them like this on top, I've already concluded that they will actually fit perfectly on top of these fingers. So, in effect, what I'm going to do is create a second level of padding on top of these fingers, which should stop the resin itself from snapping, act as the shock absorber that I was talking about earlier in the video, and I believe extend the durability of these gloves farther. I'm also going to take a little bit of the padding off this area of the glove here. It's actually kind of hard. And I'm going to be adding it in some way, shape, or form, I haven't figured out how yet, to this area of the thumb, just to give me, once again, a little bit more padding. I'm also going to figure out whether I make a leather piece that simply goes around here and snaps or ties on at this point of the wrist to once again give me more wrist protection. Because as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, this glove is very light and it's very mobile. I actually like the overall design of this glove. I just believe there's 3 areas that they just need to beef up, and this could be one of the best gloves on the market. And that's how I'll end this video. So thank you for watching. If you liked the video, give a thumbs up. It was actually a very difficult video to make. I had trouble trying to figure out the best way to explain where the flaws were on this glove. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'll make a video again once I figure out a way to get this extra padding onto the glove to see if that works, to see if it actually does make the glove better.